Hello and welcome back to Coast to Coast here with Will Schofield, your host, and Oscar Allen, also your host. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. Immediately putting me on the bottom shelf of that.
Hey, I said your host.
Co-host.
Yeah. Oh, you want to be co-host, do you?
Co-host, friend, colleague, any of the above.
Friend?
Friend.
All right, friend. Let's do this. We're back in Perth. That's right. We're out of the Gold Coast Super Hub and we're back at home with families, back around the club. How was the process getting home for you, Oscar?
Yeah, it was good. Obviously, flew out straight after the game and came home. We're in quarantine at the moment. I think today we're picking up our final belongings from the club as we couldn't get it all on the aeroplane, so there was a big courier van driving across the country. But I think it's been a pretty smooth process. Obviously, things are still being worked through at the club in regards to where we can go. We'll speak on this later, but being separated in groups and not being able to see everyone and working through the logistics of that, but very glad to be home. We
are back in Perth. I heard David Mundy on the radio this morning, actually. It was on ABC, and the host, Russell Wolfe, asked him about how he felt about getting home and back to the club and training back on your home deck and how good is it to be back at the club. And David gave a pretty good answer, and I'll probably echo it a little bit that, well, nothing's really changed. We've pretty much just transplanted what we've been doing in the Gold Coast back to Perth, and it's not really like being home from a club sense. Back with our families, yes, but in the club, it's still very different.
Yeah, I dare say the environment we had up on the Gold Coast was more of a homely environment in terms of we probably had greater, I suppose, license to do things amongst the group, more social activities, more actual training in a group.
We're interacting. I mean, we're eating together every night, every lunch, every breakfast.
Absolutely.
We don't do that here.
No, I was actually just saying before we went on air, this is the first time Scully and I have talked all week. We're in different groups throughout the week and we played on each other at training today for a little bit. But apart from that, I haven't seen you all week, and it's pretty interesting. Some guys you're not going to see much anymore until main training and game day, so it'll be definitely something to work through. I think from a personal perspective, the realisation is properly setting in that we're back home, and that's terrific, but it's not like, we'll go back to how it was in January or in mid last year. This is the new norm for at least 2020, and we've got to accept that and perform as well as we can with the surrounding circumstances.
Currently, we're in home quarantine, home isolation, as any domestic travellers would be coming back into WA. So we do have an exemption to be at the footy club, which we're very grateful. We had the WA Police Commissioner in here earlier in the week just reminding us of the fact that we are exempt compared to other members in society, and we are very grateful. But we are at home at the moment, so you can't leave your house for any reason. You can fill your car up, I believe.
Perfect.
Because you can't get home without petrol. But it's either at the club or at home. So at home, it's great. Loving life personally, back with the family. Got a little 2-year-old back there, so it's been terrific to catch up with him. He's grown up a lot in the last 5 weeks since we've been away. Now having conversations with me, Oscar, which has been good.
Wow.
But one thing I would like to raise a little bit is once we get out of this 14-day quarantine, the isolation, we're at home, which that's a government-based policy. So we're getting checked by police regularly. I've had 2 already at my home.
Yep, I haven't had any yet, so so obviously they're just ticking off the big names first.
Yes.
No, I'm expecting. I've had a phone call actually, and expecting some knocks on the door either later this evening or in the upcoming few days.
It is a weird experience having police come to your door. I don't think I've experienced that in the past, not that I can remember. It's a bit daunting. You feel like you've done something wrong, but you haven't. So they're just checking your home between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. And other than that, we have an exemption to be at the club. Otherwise, we should be at home. But once that period ends, which is the government-regulated isolation, right, we go back into AFL protocols, which for us is going to be interesting because we're going to have 8 weeks in WA, which I'm not going to say it's a COVID-free state, but the state's done particularly well in keeping numbers low and down. And once people get through, normal members of society get through that 14-day isolation period, they're in WA, pretty much life back to normal. There's some small restrictions around quantity of people in venues and licensed venues, but other than that, it's life as usual. So it's going to be an interesting one whether the AFL protocols get looked at again. I think potentially there is a bit of room to change how we're training. I think the restrictions around groups, so we're only allowed in groups of 9, and that means you can't interact with anyone else from that group. So that it's all week. And as we touched on, it creates difficulties between interacting between lines and people and staying connected, which is extremely important for us. And then you've got the no contact aspect during the week. So we've only got a small amount of time at the end of main training where we can have contact, and they're in our groups of 9. I think there's real potential to have a look at those from an AFL perspective. And I don't want to use the word loosen, but it is loosening them a little bit in order for us to train as a team and improve as football players and continue our unity and connection, which is so important to us as a footy team, I know, but other AFL teams as well. And I will say I did mention this about 3 or 4 weeks ago when they first came in, and it was coming in from Connor McKenna. Whatever happened with that incident, that was what triggered these groups. I was a bit scared but we're all out of Melbourne now, and we're potentially all out of Sydney now. So I'm just wondering if there's potential for a change in that, because at the moment there's times where it doesn't quite feel like footy to me.
Yeah, and there's a couple of points there which I think are really interesting, and I think some clarity to be provided. When we say in groups of 9 and we're not seeing each other, there are 5 separate change rooms in the football club. So it's not like we're in our normal change rooms and I can wave at Scully from across the change room and say g'day. We are genuinely sectioned off at different times. We're all in the club at different times. So not only am I not spoken to other members of the club, I haven't seen them. And secondly, on your point about the loosening of restrictions, I think it's a really interesting one, and one that now with obviously Victoria and New South Wales, all players being moved out of those states, so everyone will either be in South Australia, Western Australia or Queensland, from my understanding. They're all states that have got the whole virus under wraps to a certain extent.
Well, we don't know that, but they seem to... Well, the boys are in hubs in those states, so they're not just hanging around wherever they like. They are in hubs, and they're all in 14-day quarantines as well, and they're getting tested for COVID bi-weekly. So, sorry, not bi-weekly, like twice a week.
Yeah, twice a week.
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of this is medical and how much of this is perceptual. I said that, not you.
Yeah, and the whole reason that even though our government restrictions have been loosened, that we still had the AFL restrictions and protocols was to make it a fair and even competition. So,
which is fair enough.
Which is 100% fair enough. The players in Victoria, whilst their government restrictions were tighter, we also had to abide by them. However, now none of us is staying in a state of which there are tight restrictions.
I think outside of being at the footy club or in the hub, in the guys that are interstate, for instance, I think those restrictions need to remain in place. We can't be going and sitting in restaurants and going to bars and, interacting with people, because we are still having physical contact, and there's potential from, a Melbourne team to play a WA team. But the actual confines of training facilities, I think there's rooms to pull the restrictions back a little bit. Otherwise, I think we'll find ourselves in the next 6 to 8 weeks getting into areas where quality, if not already, is declining in the state of play, and potentially more injuries because we're not able to train to, I guess, what our bodies are used to. That's
a very good point. Now to touch on the game on the weekend. Obviously, we played against Adelaide and won our last game in the hub. From perception of someone watching, what were your thoughts on the game, Scully?
It was a weird one to watch, to be honest. It was a little stop-starty. Adelaide really took the game on, and I thought we did our best to try to curtail them early, but to their credit, they broke the lines a bit and really, we looked vulnerable at stages, but probably one of those arm wrestle games where we sort of just slowly wrestled it back, and eventually the tide kind of went over. It wasn't high scoring. There hasn't really been a lot of high scoring this year in any game, so you can't really judge a game by the scoring, but from a visual, don't know. It wasn't my favourite game to watch, but we won, so I'm happy. Yeah,
it felt like a bit of a stop-start kind of performance, and although we didn't play as well as we would have liked to in all aspects, I think really pleasingly our midfielders were dominant, and I think our backline, especially in the last 2 weeks, have been terrific. We've gained ascendancy in that area and have allowed us to hold the fort whilst the rest of us are getting our flow into the game, and then, as you said, able to work over the opposition. The crowds this weekend, 30,000 people, and I dare say not many will be wearing Eagles scarves.
Yes.
What effect do you think that'll have on the boys coming from a situation where there's been maybe 1,000 people in the crowd and you can hear the odd heckle, but 30,000 people going at our throats to say, should be an interesting experience this weekend.
Yeah, well, I mean, 3,000 people, it's like a waffle game, and you can hear the crowd. It's been good what we've had at the Gap. Brisbane that game, and I think a couple of Gold Coast games have been quite loud. It's playing in the waffle. It's still loud. 3,000 people, 30,000 people is going to be loud. It's going to be very loud, and I think it'll definitely impact the game. I think it'll impact communication. Teams that can communicate the best without crowds have a really big advantage. Good communicators can be heard. When you start getting crowds of anything over 10,000 people, you can't actually be heard unless you're following up after the play, or a lot of communication is actually instinctual, and that's why you see guys that have played a lot of footy together, as they get older, play their best footy, is because they can react without having to be told. So I think potentially that communication aspect will drop down a little bit, and you'll need to know what you're doing. It'll take that training type feel out of it, and we're back to normal. 30,000 people, that's a normal game. It's better than most games. I don't even know if Geelong wouldn't hold 30. Maybe it does, just
yeah.
The Gabba's probably 40, but some of the smaller ovals around wouldn't get 30 in there.
Yeah, on the point about the crowds of 3,000, something I've actually found quite humorous and have enjoyed is when you're playing in those type of situations, the one-off lines that people throw at you from the crowd, you can distinctively hear them. So when someone tells me I'm no good at my job, I can hear them say that. Whereas when there's 30,000 people, it's more of a murmur. Like, you don't pick up the individual comments as clearly as when it's some old guy with a pint in his hand in the pie stand yelling at me, and it's silent apart from that.
How have you found the bounce down and the time between goals? It's extended by 15 seconds, I think.
Yeah, 20 seconds. So it's gone from 40 seconds between goals to 60 seconds.
Feels like an eternity.
It feels like the longest time ever. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but on the weekend, the first time that I saw it, they normally wait for the countdown to get 100% to zero. Right. Then they bounce it. I think the umpires have taken it into their own hands, and then it gets to 10, and then the timer kind of turns off, and then they just kind of walk in and do their own thing, which I'm a huge fan of, because as we're about to allude to, there's talk of there being games every 19 days, and that means guys playing off 4 and 5 day breaks. So these longer breaks and shorter games might come into play for the first time, really, but it is something which is strange to get used to out there.
Freo, how have you seen them this year? We've got them in the Derby coming up, moving on to next week. We had a bit of awkward chat in lifts, basically. Didn't really see them that much. I thought we'd see them more.
Yeah, I thought we would, and most of the time when you do see them, none of us are giving each other very much, but
we don't know each other. Just because we all play over, and then we don't see each other in Perth.
Yeah, I think maybe one guy in each team maybe has someone who they might have played underage footy with, or is a friend of a friend, so they might say g'day to, but for the most part, they're strangers that have the same occupation. You don't find accountants walking across the street from each other and wanting to have an in-depth conversation because they don't know each other. It's similar, but on the football, Freo, I've seen their trajectory this year is similar to us. Obviously, we won in round one, had a strong performance, but after the hiatus, they probably weren't playing as well as they would have liked. I thought their performances were actually pretty strong in the hub, but weren't getting the 4 points. And same as us, have won their last 2 games coming into the Derby. What are your perceptions on this?
Yeah, Freo, from a footy perspective, I think a really similar trend to us. You nailed it. They started poorly in the hub, as did we. And did they have something to do with the hub? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe we didn't adjust to how the game was being played. But I think both footy sides, us and Fremantle, have probably just tweaked a few things in the style of play and the way we're going about it, and it's resulting in wins. So it's good to be going into a derby where both teams are up and going a bit. I think probably at stages over the last couple of years, not bagging Freo, that they've probably been down in form a little bit, and you've got to try and, I've been in those situations from a West Coast point of view where you're coming into a derby and you're trying to get yourself up for it. coming off winning games, you're up and about. You're feeling good about yourself, and they'll be coming in with full confidence, and so will we. So I think it makes for a really interesting derby from a footy sense. Take away the fact we're in 2020, the weirdest year. Weirdest year? Say that 5 times.
Which year?
Yeah, it's weird. It's one of the strangest years of all time. I think it's going to be an interesting derby, a really interesting one. They're going to be without Nat Fyfe. He was just ruled out earlier today.
Breaking news. I haven't heard that yet.
No, it hasn't been broken here on Coast to Coast, but it was broken. It appears that he came back a little too early from that hammy and might have retweaked it, which is always a danger with hamstrings. But, they would have been thinking, get him out there, best player. Just probably hasn't quite worked for them, and that'll be interesting without Fyfe. See, some younger guys going through their midfield, which they've got full of talent. They're younger guys that run through that midfield.
Yeah, they do. They've had some early draft picks. In my year, they drafted Brayshaw and Chera, 2 midfielders, picked 2 and 5 in my draft year. I think last year they got 3 guys in the top 10. They got Caleb Sarong, Hayden Young, who plays across halfback, and then they got another Indigenous small forward, Liam Henry, who looks like a really talented kid.
Yes.
So they've definitely got some young talent coming through. But as always, I'm confident we'll be able to get the job done on the weekend.
So it is a derby, and I think that's probably the build-up to it hasn't been as normal as usual. I mean, we're Wednesday of derby week, and probably a usual year that isn't 2020. You'd be doing a lot of interviews. There'd be a fair bit of hype. JK would be doing his cashies down at the pub. None of that's happening this year, but we are playing a derby. Do you remember any big derbies you went to as a kid? Have you ever played in a derby?
Yep, I played in 2 derbies last year.
Okay, awesome. Yeah,
won both of them.
I did know that. You played almost every game last year.
Thanks, Shelly. But yeah, I remember
I was probably dropped. That's probably I didn't remember.
One in particular was Hayden Ballantyne had a shot from about 55 after the siren, and I was sitting actually at the very top opposite end of Subiaco Oval. So the literal furthest...
The Subi end.
Yeah, so the furthest end possible away from it. Saw Matty Rosa punch the ball out of bounds. And
clear deliberate.
Yeah.
Absolutely lost his mind.
Yeah, don't know what happened there. And then from the other side of the ground, it looked like it was a goal, and it was a Freo home game, and went with my mate who was a Freo fan, because I grew up an Eagles fan, and I thought they won the game because there were celebrations and the crowd was going crazy, until I saw the replay on the big screen where it hit halfway up the post after being touched by about 4 or 5 different guys.
No, so let me flip the perspective, right? So we're just doing the old rotate, the 360 rotation. You're up that end. I'm on the goal line playing, right?
Exciting.
I'm on the goal line. And in this moment of madness, Rosa's just rushed it. I've sprinted back. The siren's gone. Siren's gone almost as soon as he awarded the free kick. So there was a fair bit of carry on. One, Quinton Lynch has not stood on the mark properly. The free kick was on the junction of the 50, and if you watch the kick, Quinton Lynch ends up about 5 metres inside the boundary, so he's given Ballantyne a good 10-metre run-up. Anyway, we're on the line, and I'm going to say it was Eric McKenzie, one of those guys, Mitch Brown, Eric McKenzie. I say, mate, let's link arms. We linked up with Nick Nat and said, mate, use us as a springboard. You ought to jump on us.
Oh, my God.
We'll position ourselves, and you ought to jump on us and touch this ball.
So the Tom Stewart climbed up the post before it happened?
Correct. But you're allowed to do this.
Wow.
Right? So we organised that. Great thinking. Veteran move. Kick goes up. Scully and Easy. Let's call it Easy. I don't know if it was definitely Easy. It was definitely Scully. We misread the ball, and we come to the close side of the goals. And Nick's with us, and Nick tries to jump.
The post.
It goes across the goals, and we're nowhere near it. There's no point in us being there. No one touches it. It hits the post.
So it went through all those sets of hands without anyone touching it.
It hit the post, but it was very clearly a poster.
Yeah,
very clearly.
It wasn't like hit the inside of the post. It almost hit the outside of the post and bounced directly back into play.
And there was nothing better than seeing Hayden Ballantyne celebrate early. Used to play at Peel with Ballantyne, with Hayden, I should say.
Wow.
So I can sort of say I used to be mates with him until he started playing for Freo. And seeing him celebrate early, one of the greats. One of the greats.
Talking about it as you did, used to play for Freo, were mates before he used to play for Freo. What are your thoughts on Fremantle players in general? Because there's a big perception that we hate each other. Like we're arch enemies, and some clubs drum it up. I remember Port Adelaide and Adelaide going into the hub that we can't share a hotel. We hate each other. We can't even see them across the other side of town.
Yes.
As a younger player, I don't know whether it's just me, but I don't have this level of hatred for Freo that is drummed up by the media.
I think when Woosha was coach, there was a bit more angst maybe between Freo and West Coast, because Woosha grew up in an era where that's the derbies. Some of the derbies were Royal Rumbles, and he was that sort of coach, like don't take a backward step. But probably towards, Simo came in 2014, that the last 6 years or so, but probably to a stage as I got older, the rivalry is a fan rivalry, I think. There's not, I just don't know how many people are going around going, I hate Nat 5. Like I hate that Fremantle player. I shouldn't have said Nat 5. Like I hate that Fremantle player. No one, does anyone hate anyone anymore?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think potentially like society, I don't know, that sounds weird, but culturally society has changed. So like rivalry.
Yeah.
I hate that guy.
I want to preface my comment by saying that I don't like Freo and I don't like any other team. But that's the overarching point that I'm coming from is I don't view Freo on a hatred scale as I hate them more than any other team. I just don't like any other team, and I feel like that's the way footy should be played. I want to go out every week and win, and I want the other team to lose. Like, it's not as much I enjoy winning, it's I hate the fact of losing. I'm not sure what you sit on that point.
Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. There is rivalries because like you have, like we came up against Hawthorn a lot probably, in my middle part of my career where we had a lot of close games and big games, lost the grand final. So I hated Hawthorn at that stage. Don't hate him anymore. Don't hold a grudge really. But it's difficult the way footy's set up, having to back up week after week and to hold too big a grudge because you become too up and down. It's like, I hate this team. Let's beat them. And then the next week, I don't hate this team that much. Like, let's beat them still, but you're not as motivated. Like if you need to rely on rivalries, then it's very difficult to become consistent in your effort. Again, I don't like that word, but it's difficult to put it out consistently. How do you motivate yourself if you're relying on how much you like or dislike a team, or how much big of a rivalry it is? Because the teams you don't have the bigger rivalries, does that mean you're not going to be as motivated and as consistent? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's emotionally draining getting we're getting to the stage where I have to win this game. We go in with the mindset every week that we have to win this week, and we want to win every week, but I've never been one to look at a calendar and be like, in 7 weeks we're playing this team and this specific player I really dislike. I've never ever done anything of that sort. I just go in each week and whoever we play and we hopefully win, and if we don't, we're disappointed.
Yep. I agree. You are on Coast to Coast with Oscar Allen, my co-host, and Will Schofield, yours truly. The Waffle starts this week, Oscar. How many games you played in the Waffle?
I played 2 or 3 games before I got drafted.
Yep.
And then I played maybe 10.
I ever play on you in those? No, I don't know.
No, I played on Sharrod Wellingham in my first game. I played against East Perth. I played on Sharrod Wellingham and Thomas Cole. So that was a fun experience. And then I played maybe 10 or 12 games in my first year at the club.
Yep.
And then haven't played one since.
So it's a weird one. I've played about 70, a lot. It's a weird one. We don't have a Waffle team. So it was a huge coup for us last year to bring a West Coast Waffle team into the Waffle competition. And of course, we didn't see the future and see what was going to happen this year, but we don't have a team in there this year. And it means for some of our guys, all of our guys that aren't picked, as we've been speaking about the last couple of weeks, there's been scrimmages, we've been calling them.
Yep.
Because there's no tribunal in these. These aren't regulated AFL games.
No, so that the big aspect of it was it couldn't be regulated by the AFL. So it is literally our list manager calling Hawthorn's list manager, say, "G'day, mate. Saturday, rock up at 8 o'clock." And if he gets it wrong and rocks up at 10 o'clock, sweet. We wait until 10 o'clock till they get there, and we rock up in our boots and play.
And it's a numbers thing as well. Like we don't have 18. We don't have 18, let alone 22. Yeah. Like last week we played against Brisbane. Brisbane drove down, which we were very grateful for, and we played 14 on 14. So we started with, I think we had 4 in the back line, 4 in the forward line, and 1 wing or something. It was very nude There wasn't a lot of help from anyone. It was a very one-on-one game.
One positive with coming back to WA is I think with the Victorian teams, I think they've got a plan to bring 2 in every fortnight or whatever to keep them rolling through. We could potentially have a fresh scrimmage opponent every week.
Yeah.
Which could be exciting.
I don't think we're playing Freo this week.
We're not?
Which is disappointing. I think that has to do with the government quarantine side of things. I don't think there was an exemption for us to get together with the Freo guys. So I believe non-selected players will be training this Saturday, which I got to be honest is like a dagger in my heart. Like not being able to play. I've played enough waffle and been dropped enough times to not worry about that. I just need to play. I need to compete. And yeah, you compete at training, but you don't have a winner or loser. There's no winner or loser.
This reminds me of my first year at the club in 2018. We were successful, won a premiership, and we liked to call, because the Waffle team, and we were East Perth affiliated then, weren't in the finals. So every Saturday before the AFL team played, we'd have what we call a Doom session.
Really?
Which would be to match AFL intensities. And obviously in 2018, the game lengths were normal. So we'd have a 12 to 14K session every Saturday morning.
For how many weeks? 4 weeks, final series. East Perth were out earlier than
East Perth were out earlier, so we had 6 weeks of it because there was the break between finals. 4 weeks.
This is very interesting.
So it's something which I'm quite familiar with, and a lot of the younger boys at the club that were in my draft year went through as well.
So how, from a mentality point of view, did you use the potential to play in finals because of former injuries as a motivator?
Yeah. Fortunately for myself, I played round 22, so I played the last game of the season against Brisbane and was dropped for that final series.
So was I.
Yeah, perfect. So
we both were.
So I had it in the back of my mind that you're really close. Like, you're close.
Yeah.
Just do everything. And I think everyone should have that mindset. Like, God, I'm really close. Like, all I need to do is get one opportunity, and I want to make sure I've done everything I can to get myself to that spot. The tough point is, you have to rely on injuries, which you never wish upon anyone in your team or anywhere else, because you can't prove form by training well on an 8-on-8 scratch match.
But this is a perfect parallel between what was happening then and what's happening now, and I hadn't really thought about that, and it's very interesting because right now you can't prove yourself if you're not in the team. How do you get selected? Yes, you can. Exactly how you said, you've just got to have a good attitude, train well, not hope for injuries. But if something, if there is an opportunity does come up, you need to be ready. That's pretty much how you motivate yourself. You need to keep yourself in shape.
Yeah. Talking on the scrimmage and motivating yourself, who do you think is the best performed scrimmage player? I'm hoping we're going to do something at the end of the year with scrimmage best and fairest, or I think that it sounds like a joke, but like,
I played in the midfield for 3 quarters last week. Let's just start with that.
Wow.
I played inside mid and I was amazing.
You were good?
I was amazing.
Well, Nathan Vardy was rolling down the singular wing, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was wing. Vaz was wing. Played Jamo, he's not really a ruckman, tall forward ruckman.
He's 200 plus centimetres.
Yeah, so he's a ruckman.
He's a ruckman.
We played him on the wing. Yeah, it was just one of those games. We had 14v14 and we had to throw positions around. I absolutely loved playing in midfield. I couldn't have loved it more. It was great fun. Easy as well. Bloody easy. I don't know what the mids are doing. It's not hard.
Playing midfield is fun. It is super fun.
It's hard. I'm taking the piss.
Yeah, you have to run a lot, but it is super fun.
That is funny playing out of position. You notice how different running patterns are. Like if I ever play forward, so difficult. Forwards would find it very difficult to go back, which is why you do it so well, mate, being able to go between the two. But the midfield, the running is just, it's not partnered with any other line. You don't run like that unless you're a midfielder, and it was hard.
Yeah. Back to my question, which you avoided.
Right, best and fairest.
Best and fairest.
Yeah, I thought I answered it.
So you got 3 votes in the weekend.
Yeah, I think I did probably 3. Daylight second, and nah.
Pick one person.
Nah. Who was good? Xavier O'Neill was good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've heard that he's been playing really well.
Did well, Xavier O'Neill. He's getting close with injuries to Shuey and guys in our midfield. If there's opportunities there, he's very close. Hamish Brayshaw was emergency last week, but weeks prior to that, he's been very good in there. So it's been exciting seeing what our mids have been able to do. I think from a backline point of view, which is where I guess I see my most of the footy, Josh Rotham and Harry Edwards have been my 2 standouts, with Luke Foley just in behind. But he's been playing on the wing a little bit, which is annoying me because he's a backman.
Roth and Harry, I think they, even in Waffle last year, they had really good standard footy, and we saw Roth earlier this year, and I'm sure he'll work his way back into the side at some stage. Now, to finish...
Yes, let's finish.
Let's finish on this.
Okay.
To finish on this, there was an interesting article released this week by ABC, and it was talking about the perspective of football. Right. And people perceiving it as, it's a boring game now. People are trying to defend too much. They're not letting the opposition score. They're not scoring as much themselves. And the perception was put across that there needs to be more onus on the TV broadcasters to provide insight to the viewers as to why coaches and teams are playing these ways. What are your thoughts on this?
That is an interesting one, Oscar. I did read the article. It had a little bit to do with camera angles, which I don't really buy into. Like we've used the same camera angle for 50 years. You know, side on. Can we do what the NFL does, which is come in behind the play, have the overhead camera, which I think we've used, but we don't use that from a commentary. We do use that from special effects kind of thing. That was one part of the article, which I don't know. I think side on's fine. I think how we view the game. I think how we present it it's a special comments point of view. I think there can be more insight and less criticism. And I spoke about this last week or the week before. You don't have to be critical to have intelligent insight into a game and speak about why things are happening. I think a couple of the best guys in the business at the moment, Luke Hodges good. I won't name any others I won't name bad ones either. But the guys that are able to look at the game and speak about why things are happening rather than why a player missed his kick or why a team flooding too many numbers back. You can turn that into something as well. But like the criticisms, there's just no point, and I think people get bored of it. And I think the critical stuff, always analysing the negatives, it makes it difficult to watch with commentary sometimes. A perfect example would be, I did a bit of work on the AFLW just gone by on Fox Footy, and it was great fun and did special comments. And I'm no expert, but I did expert commentary. And I, to be honest, didn't know a lot of the girls. I didn't know their names. I haven't watched AFLW my whole life like I have AFL men's, and I would struggle with names. So instead of speaking specifically about players and, their faults or, how they played last year and how they're not doing as well as last year, I was just speaking about the game, and it was really fun. And I don't know, maybe people listening were just like, you were bad, man. So maybe I've got the wrong idea, but I think analysing the game and taking away the individual comparisons to other, I don't know. That's what I would push, more analysis. David King does it quite well, but that's more after the game, isn't it? We don't see a lot of it during the game.
I'd be interested to see, rather than saying this particular player's had 35 touches, be the structure they're playing is they're bringing an extra forward up to allow them to have more numbers around the ball, which in turn gives the other team an extra back, which is why it seems like they're playing an extra in defence, and just giving more insight to changing motions in the game. And Sydney were behind at quarter time, so they've decided to do this structural change, and we can highlight it when you look at the board like this, and you could get the team and circle players and where they've moved to. And
I'm always surprised when I see coaches not speak like that, because coaches should be they would be the best. That's what effectively I'd like to hear a coach and if you have players that can, some players are built like that are able to analyse a game and look at it as it's going. That's why Luke Hodges is good. He's done it for a long time. He played like that. So you can look at it, see how it's going. I'd like to see more of that. And it surprises me some coaches
don't bring that into the commentary.
Yeah, correct. It's
good. I mean, maybe it's something where people are more interested in, and there's more shock value when you're making individual comments.
Shock value. God.
But yeah, I'll leave that with you.
Okay, well, let's finish on that. You were with Coast to Coast, sometimes known as Bald and the Beautiful. Oscar, looking extra beautiful today, mate. Thanks for joining me.
I'm pushing that. Thank you, colleague, friend, and co-host Will Schofield.